I am Melinda Alexis Hayes, and I'm Special Counsel for Public Engagement at the Brooklyn DA's office. And I want to thank not only DA Gonzalez for organizing and spearheading and making sure that we held this forum today in this weather, but not only that, here in Central Brooklyn and in Crown Heights. I now have the pleasure to introduce someone who has dedicated over 22 years to serving Brooklyn. He is our District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez. Eric Gonzalez understands the plight of immigrants. He understands that their dreams are to come to America for a better life. DA Gonzalez understands the needs of Brooklyn. He understands the needs of Central Brooklyn. He understands the needs of everyone who is in this room. Without further ado, I would like everyone to meet and greet District Attorney Eric Gonzalez.
Good morning. And thank you for being here today. It's an honor to be with all of you. One of the things as the DA that I must make sure is that we have safety and security for all our residents. And many people, especially now with the changes in politics that have happened, are concerned that immigrants will be forced back into the shadows, especially those who are undocumented, because they are afraid what will happen. It was important for me to come today to let all of you know that as the Brooklyn DA, it does not matter to me how you arrived in Brooklyn. What matters to me is that you're here, that my responsibility is to make sure that you're safe and secure, and that we do everything to have you as part of our community and involved with us. So we're going to partner with you in many different ways. This is just one way today that we come back before you to talk about issues.
So now we're going to get into the panel discussion. The panel will be moderated by Ken Ng, who DA Gonzalez has already introduced, and we will have representatives from our Immigrant Fraud Unit, our Real Estate Fraud Unit, Hate Crimes Unit, New York Immigration Coalition, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services.
I'm the chief of the Immigrant Fraud Unit. We basically prosecute anybody in Brooklyn that targets immigrants and is for financial scams and frauds and so forth. If you are an immigrant and they're targeting you, we're here to help you. Camille, I'm gonna start off with you. As DA Gonzalez has said, post-November, and I don't know why it's post-November, there's been a lot of panic going on. What are some of the chief concerns out there that you've been hearing, and what tips do you want to give to our audience in terms of immigration?
So we've been seeing a lot, and my organization actually represents about 150 nonprofit organizations across the state that work with immigrants. And what we've been hearing a lot, honestly, is fear. There's a lot of questions. I don't have the answers. I don't think anyone here, unfortunately, has the answers because we don't know what's going to happen. But there's obviously a lot of cause for concern based on what we heard during the campaign season. And what we're hearing more than anything is fear. Fear of families being torn apart by deportation, fear of hate crimes and bias crimes and hate speech and all the incidents that have been rising in the news right now, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of not knowing what your legal status is or how to get it for a family member or somebody you know through school or anything like that. Please note, no one in New York City can ask you for your immigration status unless it's relevant for some reason. For example, if you've been a member of an immigration-related scam, potentially the fact that you're an immigrant is relevant, but then it's confidential. So no one in New York City or New York State government is going to communicate in any way with Immigration and Customs Enforcement or lead you somehow to deportation. The announcement that the district attorney just made about hiring immigration lawyers to make sure that whoever's getting offered pleas aren't going to have to pay an even higher sentence because of that plea, because they may be deported or have immigration consequences, that's unbelievable. And I haven't heard of that happening, not just New York City, nowhere in the country have I heard of that happen. Please don't be afraid to come forward. Please don't be afraid to ask the right people for the right help. There's, I'm not gonna say it, but there's a New York State New Americans hotline number that you can call. And you can go on our website at protectingimmigrants.org and get that number. They'll tell you where you can go for legal help that you can trust. So don't risk going to somebody who might be scamming you, who might not know the answers. Call that 1-800 number and they will direct you to someone you can trust. And if you've seen a scam or been victim of a scam, you can report it there too. Recently, we heard, just yesterday, we found out about people texting and saying you have to report to immigration on such and such date. That's a scam. Immigration, and I'm sure Shai will go over this, does not communicate by text messages.
So Shai, as a member of the USCIS and Department of Homeland Security, what are the most helpful hints right now for immigrants?
We're seeing a lot of people that have been scammed by what we call unscrupulous practitioners, pretending to be immigration attorneys, people pretending to be immigration experts, and so forth and so on. And so what we have developed is a brochure that basically says the wrong help can hurt. Because if it sounds too good to be true, guess what? It's too good to be true. There is no automatic way of obtaining lawful status in the United States. And some helpful hints for you to take back to your communities and to your neighbors is anytime you hire someone to do work for you, when you pay them, you get a receipt, correct? When you go to the store to purchase items, you get a receipt. So when you hire someone to represent you with respect to your immigration matter or your immigration case, get a receipt. Never give someone your original documents. That is a way in which scammers use that to keep asking you for more money. They will hold on to your birth certificate, to your marriage certificate, because in many instances, in order to obtain an immigration benefit, you have to file an application with my agency. When you are seeking information about immigration services, be very careful. USCIS.gov is the accurate website to obtain immigration-related information. Do not sign anything that you don't understand. And if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Many fraudulent practitioners will have you sign applications telling you, well, you know, don't say that you have children when you actually do. So if you sign that document, USCIS is going to hold you accountable for the information contained on the application. In terms of the President's executive action on immigration as it relates to the deferred action for childhood arrivals, you know, the program that you hear about with the Dreamers, if you will, as of right now, that program still exists. Will it exist under a new administration? I cannot honestly say. We don't know what the President-elect will do after he is sworn in.
So Camille, can you follow up a little bit on the DACA issue? And can you first tell us what DACA is, quickly?
Yes. DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's a program that President Obama started in 2012 for individuals who came before they were 16 to the United States and who had been here since 2007 and were under 30 years old in 2012. And it's a program that the president created sort of on his own. It's actually, he formalized the way to apply for something that already existed, but he sort of formalized it for this group of people. And about 37,000 New Yorkers have received DACA, about 47,000 have applied. And the fear now is that they've provided their name and their social security numbers and their addresses to immigration. And so there's a lot of fear as to what could happen to these individuals now that this new president has said he'll get rid of DACA and, you know, wants to deport a lot of people. There's a bill pending in the Senate right now that would protect DACA individuals, and there are groups like mine that are working very, very hard to ensure that no matter what, these individuals, these 37,000 New Yorkers, don't come to any harm because they relied on, you know, in good faith on the government, on the U.S. government. And one question we're getting a lot of right now is that people are in the middle of renewing. So the advice we're giving is, if you want to renew and take your chance that the program won't be canceled, you're likely not, unless something has changed since the last time you applied, like you were arrested or something like that, you likely aren't putting yourself in any more danger than you are already. You're not necessarily in danger, but you're definitely not exposing yourself more, or you're not creating an additional risk to yourself than because they already have your information.
Jose, can you tell us a little bit about the Immigrant Fraud Unit, the objective and the mission of that unit, and tell us some of the cases or what type of cases that you've investigated and prosecute?
Sure. The Immigrant Fraud Unit, as was described earlier by DA Gonzalez, is here to prosecute individuals who target and take advantage of our immigrant community here in Brooklyn. We've had a number of cases come through, but the majority of the complaints that we get are from individuals who are attempting to petition for legal status, for citizenship, or for their spouses and or children. They run into situations where they don't speak the language, they're not familiar with the legal terms, and seek help from individuals either at a church or at a storefront or friends of a friend, cousins, whoever, who claim to have experience and have done this before and can get all this paperwork for you for a cut rate. A lot of the times what ends up happening, like my colleagues here have mentioned, is that they'll end up paying 2 or 3 times more than they would have normally paid had they just gone the correct route. So we get a lot of those complaints, and what we've also noticed is that if an individual complains about a certain person, they're usually not the first or the only one. A lot of these individuals that are unscrupulous in their actions will continue to perpetrate these scams until they're caught. So if they say to themselves, well, this worked the first time, I'll just keep this going. I don't have to do anything other than sound like I know what I'm doing, and I'll just keep taking money, which is always in cash. So this is a very, very lucrative scam that these individuals perpetrate because they don't necessarily have a storefront or have to register with anyone. They're very mobile, and because it's word of mouth, once they've been, once a complaint has come through, they can be elusive. So as Shakonia mentioned, there are several things that you can do to help protect yourself. Receipts are very important in our world because I'm here to try to prove that a crime was committed. The best way to prove that you've paid money is a receipt. So we often, when we go to these forums and do these events in the community, we strongly encourage all of the participants to always demand a receipt. It is your right to have a record of what you've done. It is a right to have a record of what you've paid. And if something were to go awry, there is your proof. And that helps us tremendously in our fight to help prosecute these individuals that take advantage of our communities.
So Kelly, especially nowadays with many of the immigrant populations, they're so scared. So if they are a target of a hate crime, what should they do? Who should they go to?
So the first thing that you should always do if you're a victim of any type of crime that's especially violent is call 911. That's the first thing, especially if it's something that's ongoing or we believe we can catch the perpetrator right away, we're gonna call 911, right? And then the local precinct that you're in when the crime is committed, they're gonna respond to wherever you are when you call them. It is very, very important that at the time that the police are called, that you express to them that a hate crime was committed. You know, that someone called you out of your name, that someone said something, or that this was committed because of someone's bias towards you for whatever your protected class is. Because what's going to happen next is the police officers from that particular precinct are then going to reach out to the Hate Crimes Task Force. It's a New York City Police Department, NYPD organization. They respond to all 5 boroughs for any time there's a hate crime committed, but they have to be called out from the local precinct first. And then they go and investigate the case and they try to enhance it. So what they do is they go around, they look for video, they talk to people and things of that nature, but it's important that they get called out to come to meet with you in the first place, and they won't get a chance to do that immediately if they're not told, if the original precinct isn't told the full story. So a lot of times when we get the case, they'll tell us that this was a hate crime, but the Hate Crimes Task Force was never notified. So it's very, very important. You would think that that would be something that people automatically do, but people sometimes are so frantic from being assaulted or robbed that they forget, you know, what was the motivation behind the crime. So that's going to be essential. If in fact the Hate Crimes Task Force doesn't respond for whatever reason, or you forget to mention what the motivation for the crime was, that's still okay. Because we could always, in our office, notify them to go backwards and try to investigate or enhance the case after that point. And we also have our own detective investigators in the office as well. If there's a crime that happened in the past, and let's say you were assaulted on the street and now you're home, or you believe that your complaint wasn't taken down as a hate crime, we have a hate crimes hotline in our office, which is a 24-hour hotline. The phone number, if everyone has their pens or their phones out, is 718-250-4949. Again, that's 718-250-4949. It's a hotline.
It's a hotline. Part of the American dream is to own your own home, right? And can you tell us some of the common misconceptions that people have about real estate ownership and undocumented immigrants?
One big concern that people have falsely is that immigrants, even illegal immigrants, can't get a mortgage. That is incorrect. It can be difficult to get a mortgage. It can be difficult for him to get a mortgage. It can be difficult for me to get a mortgage because, especially in a place like Brooklyn, if you want to buy something, it's going to cost a lot of money. You have to be scrupulously honest with yourself. Can I afford this house? Don't lie to yourself about what you can afford, because if you can't afford to pay your rent, what happens? You get evicted. Well, if you can't afford to pay your mortgage, eventually you're going to face a foreclosure. And if you're facing foreclosure in Brooklyn, that's where so much of the work that comes into my unit comes from. Foreclosing in Brooklyn can take 4, 5, 6. I've seen active cases in the docket in Kings County Supreme Court that are going on 10 years in foreclosures. It's way too complicated, and there are too many steps, and it's in all of that delay and all of that confusion and all of that uncertainty where the scammers come in and tell you, I have the solution to your problem. So trust me. Those are 2 words that should always make you afraid. Trust me, or don't tell anyone. If someone comes to you because you've got a particular problem with your house, and a problem that you know a lot of your neighbors share, or you read about the paper and there are thousands of people with this problem, and this guy comes to you and he has this magic sounding solution, you should ask him, oh, let me come to your office tomorrow. And you should go to that person's office, and before you go in, you should stand there and wait and look for the line to form. Because if there is no line, then he doesn't have the magic solution, does he? Because if he did, there would be a line out the door. Don't believe something that is too good to be true. That's where you get in trouble.